Get out of my house. My mother-in-law, Victoria, screamed, her voice echoing through the grand hallway of the estate I had spent 5 years turning into a home. She tossed my packed suitcase down the marble stairs, a smug smile plastered across her face. Standing behind her was my husband, Julian, looking down at his expensive watch, completely indifferent to my humiliation. Victoria sneered, "You're nothing but a gold digger, and now that my son is running the family empire, we don't need your middle-class trash ruining our image." They thought they were destroying me. They thought I was leaving with nothing but the clothes on my back. What Victoria didn't know, and what Julian was too terrified to admit, was that the board of directors had met 3 hours ago. I didn't cry. I just smiled, looked her dead in the eye, and whispered, "Your son isn't the CEO anymore." My name is Chloe, and at 27 years old, I learned that the people who claim to love you the most can be the very ones quietly planning your destruction. 5 years ago, I married Julian. Back then, I didn't see the warning signs. I was a brilliant financial auditor, rising rapidly through the corporate ranks when I met him. Julian was charismatic, handsome, and carried the weight of a legacy. Vanguard Enterprises, a massive tech conglomerate founded by his grandfather. But behind the glittering facade, the company was hemorrhaging cash due to years of mismanagement. When we got married, his aristocratic and overbearing mother, Victoria, treated me like a charity case. To her, my middle-class background was a stain on their pristine social standing. Yet, she didn't mind exploiting my brain. I willingly stepped down from my own corporate climb, sacrificing my career to serve as Vanguard's chief financial strategist. For 5 grueling years, I worked late into the night, restructuring their failing debts, optimizing their tax strategies, and quietly turning their sinking ship into a highly profitable empire. Julian reaped all the rewards, earning the title of CEO and basking in the media spotlight while I remained his invisible, dutiful wife. I thought I was building a future for our family. I thought the cold glares from Victoria and the growing arrogance in Julian's eyes were just the stressful side effects of wealth. I was completely blind to the fact that they viewed my love as a weakness and my loyalty as nothing more than a tool to be used until broken. The shift in our marriage wasn't sudden. It was a slow, agonizing freeze. As Vanguard Enterprises began to flourish under the weight of my unseen labor, Julian's humility vanished entirely. He started staying out late, attending high society galas alone, and treating me less like a partner and more like an inconvenient piece of office equipment. Victoria encouraged every bit of his arrogance. She went out of her way to ensure I knew exactly where I stood in their hierarchy, which was firmly at the bottom. The boiling point came during Victoria's annual charity gala, a lavish event hosted at their sprawling estate. I had spent weeks preparing the financial forecasts for the business investors attending that night, on top of managing the catering logistics Victoria had dropped on my plate. When I finally sat down at the formal dinner table, exhausted and wearing a simple off-the-rack dress, Victoria looked at me with open disgust. In front of influential city leaders and potential clients, she loudly asked me to go to the kitchen to fetch more champagne, laughing that Chloe is so much better suited for domestic service than high society. I looked at Julian, expecting him to defend his wife. Instead, he just laughed along with his mother, swirling his expensive wine and murmuring that I shouldn't be so sensitive. It was a masterful display of psychological warfare. They wanted to strip away my confidence, ensuring I remained their silent, submissive asset generator. They truly believed that because they possessed the old family name, they could treat my dignity like a doormat, completely oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my compliance. The illusions finally shattered into 1,000 pieces 3 weeks after that humiliating dinner. As Vanguard's annual corporate audit approached, it fell on me to finalize the comprehensive financial ledgers before they were sent to the independent regulatory board. It was tedious, late-night work, the kind Julian always avoided. I sat alone in our home office, surrounded by stacks of digital balance sheets and bank logs, when a series of hidden transactions caught my eye. A shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands under the name V-Legacy Holdings had been quietly siphoning millions of dollars out of Vanguard's core operational accounts over the past 18 months. My heart hammered against my ribs as my fingers flew across the keyboard, tracking the digital breadcrumbs. The authorization codes didn't belong to some rogue hacker. They belonged to Julian. Digging deeper into the encrypted subledgers, I uncovered the devastating truth. Julian and Victoria were systematically embezzling corporate funds. They weren't using the money for business expansion. They were transferring it to cover massive, offshore luxury debts, illegal real estate investments, and a private gambling habit Julian had desperately hidden from the public eye. They had stolen nearly $4 million from their own shareholders. Worse, the upcoming audit paperwork was structured in a way that would legally pin the blame on whoever signed off on the final compliance review. That person was supposed to be me. They had designed this entire financial trap assuming I would blindly sign the documents out of marital loyalty and naivety. They truly believed I was too stupid to look beneath the surface, planning to let me take the fall if the regulators ever caught on, destroying my life to save their own skin. A cold, sharp clarity washed over me as I stared at the glowing computer screen. The crying, broken woman Julian and Victoria expected me to become simply dissolved. Instead, the seasoned financial auditor took over. I knew that if I confronted them right then, they would use their expensive legal teams to spin the narrative, erase the digital tracks, and destroy my credibility before I could even find a footing. I needed to let them believe that their perfect little trap was working exactly as planned. The next morning at breakfast, I acted completely submissive. When Julian casually asked if the audit papers were ready for my signature, I forced a sweet, compliant smile and told him I just needed a couple more days to double-check the formatting. He smirked, entirely satisfied with himself, and patted my hand as if I were a child. The moment he left for the office, my real work began. I spent the next 48 hours downloading every single encrypted bank statement, forging trail, and authorization code onto a secure, external drive. Instead of going to the police, where bureaucracy might delay justice, I bypassed Julian entirely. I secretly contacted Vanguard's true majority shareholders and the independent board of directors. I laid out the indisputable evidence of Julian's multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme, explaining exactly how he was putting the entire conglomerate at risk of a federal shutdown. Shocked and furious, the board immediately scheduled a secret emergency vote for the following Monday morning. I spent the rest of the weekend letting Julian and Victoria believe they were untouchable, quietly watching them walk right into the cage they had built for me. The trap sprung on Monday afternoon, exactly as I had orchestrated. I was upstairs packing a small bag of my personal belongings when I heard the heavy front doors slam open. Victoria's shrill voice cut through the quiet house, demanding that I get downstairs immediately. When I reached the top of the marble staircase, I saw her standing there, flanked by two burly security guards she had hired from a private firm. Behind her stood Julian, leaning against the archway with his hands in his pockets, refusing to meet my eyes. Victoria didn't just want me gone. She wanted a spectacle. She wanted to crush my spirit entirely. "Get out of my house," she screamed, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. Before I could even speak, she snatched my packed suitcase from the floor and tossed it down the stairs. Clothes burst from the zipper, scattering across the polished floor. Victoria sneered up at me, her face twisted in a smug, triumphant smile. "You're nothing but a gold digger, Chloe, and now that my son has full control of the family empire, we don't need your middle-class trash ruining our social image. You leave with nothing." I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I slowly walked down the stairs, stepping over my ruined clothes, and stopped just inches from her. The house was dead silent, the security guards shifting uncomfortably. I looked past Victoria to Julian, whose smug grin was suddenly beginning to falter under my icy stare. I took a deep breath, smiled directly into Victoria's eyes, and whispered, "Your son isn't the CEO anymore." Victoria laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that rattled the crystal chandelier above us. "You've completely lost your mind, you pathetic little girl," she spat, waving her hand defensively. But her laughter died instantly when Julian's phone began to violently buzz in his pocket. Then his personal phone rang. Then his tablet. The simultaneous digital alerts filled the tense silence of the hallway like a fire alarm. Julian pulled out his phone, his thumb trembling as he stared at the screen. His face drained of all color, shifting from smug satisfaction to a sickly, pale green. Dozens of missed calls and urgent emails from the board of directors and the corporate legal team were flooding his inbox. I crossed my arms, watching his hands shake. "Go ahead, Julian. Answer it," I said quietly. He didn't need to. A breaking news notification popped up on his screen. The board had just issued an emergency press release. Julian had been stripped of his title and terminated immediately for gross financial misconduct and embezzlement. Victoria gasped, grabbing her son's arm as she saw the headlines. "What is this?" "Julian, tell her it's a mistake." But Julian couldn't speak. I revealed the ultimate twist they never saw coming. Because of the specific clauses in the initial financial restructuring agreements I had drafted years ago, the board needed someone untainted by fraud to save the company from absolute bankruptcy. 3 hours ago, the majority shareholders held their secret emergency vote. They didn't just fire Julian, they voted me in as the interim chairperson of Vanguard Enterprises, effectively making me his boss. The fallout was absolute. With the evidence I provided, Vanguard's board launched a massive corporate lawsuit against Julian to recover the embezzled $4 million. To avoid a high-profile prison sentence, he was forced to liquidate every single asset he owned. Victoria's precious estate was seized and foreclosed upon to pay back the offshore creditors. Today, Julian works a low-level night shift job just to make ends meet, while Victoria lives in a cramped, rented apartment, stripped of the high society standing she valued more than human decency. As for me, I successfully stabilized Vanguard Enterprises before selling my shares for a fortune, moving to a beautiful penthouse overlooking the city. I am finally free, accountable to no one but myself, and running my own independent financial consulting firm. Now, I'm curious about all of you who listen to my story. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have walked away quietly or fought back the way I did? Comment below and let me know. Thank you for watching until the very end.